And we're live.
Oh, hello, everybody. It is Monday night, 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, and we're here for the very first webinar of the four-part series called Tuning into Emerging Consciousness. I have a little bit of echo on my mic here, so I'll do my best. As we do with technology, there will be some challenges here. But just to let you know, this series is brought to you by The Haven and in partnership with the Stream of Consciousness. And we have an echo here, so I'm not quite sure what to be doing. And, I think it's a little bit fixed now. And we're just going to keep going on. I've got some good technical support in the background.
So Jennifer, let me interrupt you. Definitely have an audio loop. Hi, everybody. This is Jason floating in the background doing some technical stuff. Jennifer, do you have your earbuds handy?
I do. On. Testing.
So I'm going to mute your mic for a sec. You still have that audio feedback loop. It probably hasn't updated to that new microphone choice. So do you remember how to change the microphones that you're using? If you hover over your image here, you can tell it which microphone to use, and then you'll be able to pick the new mic you've just added. I'm unmuting you to see if it's changed.
Okay. How's that?
Beautiful.
Hey! Yay! Oh, the miracles of technology. Okay. Thank you so much, Jason. So we'll get back to this. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. This is the world of technology and live events. And thank you, Jason, and the Stream of Consciousness for helping us put this together. We're really quite excited. We have a four-part series, and tonight is the beginning, and we'll be having one in October and November and December, all different themed, but relating to this topic of tuning into emerging consciousness. So by the end of the series, we hope that you will have stimulated some new thinking, both big picture and right down to everyday choices and things that you can be doing to enhance your awareness and presence and larger consciousness in the world. So I want to welcome David and Linda, who are on the screen with me. And I'm actually coming from Vancouver in British Columbia. And why don't you just say hello, David and Linda, and let us know where you're joining us tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm sitting in my home here in Nanaimo, and I'll be kind of in the background a little bit, running the PowerPoint and so forth. So, hello.
And I'm here in my home on beautiful Gabriola Island.
All right. Sounded like we had a little bit of a feedback there with you, David, too. Maybe Jason can have a look at that. But tonight, I'm really thrilled to have the both of you and to spend this time with you. Linda and David are both core Haven faculty leaders, and they've been leading programs at the Haven for over 20 years, especially our Come Alive program, which is our foundational program. And I'd like to add that you are both my dear friends, mentors, colleagues, and in my opinion, wise and wonderful elders. So I'm just thrilled that you're here tonight to be doing this with us. And as you already heard from Jason, we also have somebody else in the background that you won't see, and that's Paula Brent, our wonderful digital marketing director wizard So she's in the background giving us a hand too. So it's taken a whole team to make this happen. And if you are experiencing anything technical, hopefully Jason will be taking care of that for you. There is a chat area. If you just look below the video, you'll see there's a little thing that says chat. So you can add in anything there. The whole point of this is to engage and participate. That's a great place to do that. There's also a question and answer period that we will have closer to the end of the webinar, but you can add in your questions into where it says ask a question. And if you don't have one, that's great too. And you can upvote a question. So if you see one you really like, then you can just vote for it, and we'll try and answer the ones that get the most votes. All right, I'm taking a breath. And that's free for you to do all this session too, just like this webinar was. So this is very enlivening. The topic tonight is expanding into everyday consciousness. And in a few minutes, Linda's going to be taking you through the Haven Resonance model. And then she and David will be sharing their perspectives. And so that's the sort of the format of the webinar before we go into a Q&A period. We invite you to stay right to the end. We're also going to be giving away 3 of these books. This is the book called Joining, which is written by our founders, Bennett Wong and Jock McKean. And we have announcement to make at the end to give 3 of those books away, as well as a really exclusive discount on programs because you're actually here. So stay tuned and listen in for that. And I know that there have been about 500 people that have signed up for this webinar from all over the world. And some people have been to the Haven. Some people don't know the Haven. So I'm just delighted that all of you have joined here. I heard that we have people from Brazil and Australia, United Kingdom, Thailand, France, from the US, other places, and then of course in Canada, in our homeland, and right over on Gabriola Island as well, where the Haven is actually located. And so many of our Haven alumni and people that have been coming to the Haven have been supporting by coming to our programs for many years. But for those who don't know us, please do take some time to check us out on the web. But we are a nonprofit learning center, and our focus is on relational learning. And in that, we cover things like self-responsibility, creative expression, effective communication, relationship building, having healthy relationships in your life, and integrating our minds and our bodies and our spirits, and expanding our consciousness like our theme is. And we've been doing this for over 35 years. And I can attest that I've been one of the people that have been transformed by this work that we do at the Haven, and a lot of what David and Linda have brought to the Haven. So just stay tuned. We're going to start with them in a few minutes. And I just want to encourage you to chat with us, ask a question, engage in the polls. They're already up and running. You can see the questions that we're running there, and Linda and David will tune into them as well. And just a note to remind you that the next webinar, October 16th, is the neurobiology of connection. And so just bookmark that for yourself. And tonight, we're going to move into it, into expanding into everyday consciousness with Linda and David. And I hope that all of you will be inspired and, hey, maybe even transformed. So I'm going to hand it over, and I may disappear from the screen here. And And eventually I'll come back to see you again. So thanks for your patience and enjoy Linda and David. I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, so hello to many of you that I know and love, and it's been a while since we've seen each other. So I'm intending to string together some ideas and assumptions that have personally, profoundly influenced me and invigorated my life, and particularly the last couple of years when I experienced 2 cancers in a period of 2 years. And in addition to that, I want to offer an overview of the assumptions and the ideas that are the foundation for the work we've been doing at Haven, thousands of people over the past 36 years. So I hope to stimulate your thinking and your wondering, and maybe offer something that will be of benefit to you. And part of it that I've personally been experiencing is waking up to the phenomenal potentials that I think are, and discovering that they're actually inherent in each of us. And we're kind of shaking ourselves out collectively of centuries-old trance of limiting our consciousness and interfering with our interrelatedness. And in that way, we're threatening ourselves with self and other destruction. So big thing that I've learned is that all of us come equipped with the capacity for expanded consciousness if we choose to learn. We don't require any substances or any artificial enhancement to do that. So we're going to talk about resonance and tuning in to resonance. And Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So the point here is that everything and everyone in our universe is made of focused energy, vibrating in a constant motion at particular frequencies. And this energy is endlessly passing back and forth. And what we experience as solid matter is energy. The substance of our bodies is energy, vibrating at particular frequency. Our thoughts and our emotions are also energy, vibrating at a particular frequency. Now, resonance itself is synchronized vibrations. These synchronized vibrations are seen to be integral to our consciousness, as well as the composition of our physical reality. So resonance is a principle that underlies the personal growth work that Jennifer outlined for you, that we've been, it's actually nothing new to us. It's just interesting that the science is now supporting what we've been working with for many years. So it's actually foundational to our existence. Resonance is foundational. So when we're on a path to improve the quality of our life, whether it's health or self-acceptance or relationships, compassion, contentment, and joy for life, we won't actually shift unless we address the resonance that lies at the root. So vibration of energy is the basis of all interaction. It's between people and every aspect of our visible and our invisible universe. So there's a phenomenon, I find this interesting, it's called spontaneous self-organization, where things, including people, that are vibrating at different frequencies, when you put them in proximity for a period of time, they actually sync up and all begin to vibrate at the same frequency. If you want to look into this a little bit more, you can look on YouTube for the synchronization of metronomes, and that'll take you further into that world. And I mention this because it's this phenomena that influences our brain functioning, our human consciousness, and the consciousness in the universe. So resonance is a motion, it's an oscillation between different states. And so what this means to us is that we're completely relational within every dimension of our being. So to be alive is to be vibrating. We exist in this shared field of vibration, and we share these vibrations with everything and everyone else. So our bodies and our brains and our nervous systems are exquisitely designed with the capacity to tune in and to tune out of this vast consciousness, this vast field of vibration. Now, consciousness itself is challenging to define. And that's something that as I talk about it, you can be thinking about, what do you define as consciousness? How do you see it? There are varying opinions among mystics and philosophers and religious people and scientists. And some of the basic definition includes our capacity to be aware of our internal and external experience. It's our ability to be aware and observe what we think and feel, to experience a sense of self or soul, and to be aware of existence within the universe. It's related to the relationship between our mind and the world. Now, Ken Wilber described consciousness as a spectrum with ordinary awareness at one end and more profound types of awareness at higher levels. There's something called panpsychism, which is one of the oldest philosophical theories. This is the one I like, that says consciousness is not exclusive to humans, that all matter, for example, trees, creatures, even stones and rocks, have their consciousness. So according to Plato, this relatively old guy, this world, this is a quote from him, this world is indeed a living being endowed with a soul and intelligence, a single visible living entity contained and containing all other living entities, which by their nature are all related. So even more recent scientific experiments suggest that consciousness is actually a substance outside of the confines of our bodies. It's a highly ordered energy with the capacity to actually change physical matter. I guess the point is that our biofields and our consciousness are connected, of course. So for now, I'll just say that consciousness is a dynamic field of awareness that has the ability to either narrowly focus or broadly expand. And that's the thing that I think is really relevant to us. The exciting thing is that each of us can actually choose how narrowly or how broadly we want to focus our consciousness. So back to Earth for a minute. All living things are attuned to each other and also to the Earth and its magnetic energies. So the Earth pulses with a resonant wave that we call the Schumann Resonance, and it's been dubbed as the Earth's heartbeat. And this electromagnetic heartbeat has been detected as high as 500 miles above the Earth. So everything from our brain waves and our biorhythms to our states of consciousness are directly correlated to the Earth's frequencies. Now, another interesting thing about this that I find exciting is that for many, many years, the Schumann resonance was steady at 7.83 hertz until just a few years ago, when it began to accelerate to somewhere in the 15 to 25 hertz levels. So the Schumann resonance actually can show up in certain people's brain waves who are actually in tune with the Earth, which we're all meant to be. And as the Earth's frequencies increase, so does our capacity for consciousness. So that's what we're experiencing on our planet right now. Now, the next slide shows a representation of what we call universal life force energy. We all exist, we coexist within this unified field of invisible moving forces. And this is the mystical aspect of our existence that we've experienced throughout the centuries. Actually, our existence still remains a wonderfully mysterious thing to this day. There are actually synchronistic rhythms that are present throughout all of nature, including humans, and actually they found them even in single-cell organisms that existed millions of years ago. And the remarkable discovery is that the synchronizer resides not on Earth, but in the planets, especially the sun. So I find this absolutely magnificent. And the point here is that invisible forces that we cannot see are responsible for shaping everything, including our material world. Every one of us is made of subatomic particles or subatomic particles, and they're immaterial, what Bruce Lipton calls nano tornadoes of energy. So each one of us, if you think about it, is just this packet of pulsating energy interacting within a vast sea of interconnected energy. Let me see, like it or not, I guess what we can say is that as long as we're alive, we're resonating within this sea of energy. One vibration pattern interacts and influences another pattern of vibration. So depending on the frequency of the influencing forces, when vibrations interact, they can produce more powerful resonance or they can cancel each other out. And in some ways, that's what we do with each other in our human interactions. A very simple example of this is the microwave oven, where harmonic resonance heats things up, where noise canceling earphones, the vibrations clash and cancel out the sound. We do that, we meet someone and we feel immediately close and open. Other people we meet and we're unexplainably pulled back and cautious. We'll hear music that resonates and soothes our nervous system. And all other music we'll hear and it clashes in resonance and we find it irritating and grating. Now, every cell in our body is resonating, communicating, and interacting. So we're constantly receiving and transmitting information right down to the membrane of each cell in our body. So we're constantly, all living things are in a constant two-way flow of information within our environment. Let me think. I want to say something that I find interesting too, that even in the womb, this communication is adjusting the baby's biology to sustain life in the birth environment. The mother's perception and interpretation of what is going on around her is relayed to the fetus to actually aid the baby's biology to adjust for the best possible survival. And in some ways, that's what we're all doing right from our birth, is we're adjusting our biology, we're adjusting our experience of life for the best possible survival in our given circumstances. Now with consciousness, the exciting thing is we're actually learning that we have much more choice over creating the circumstances that we're in than we've previously thought. The main point here is that we coexist in this vast field of life force. It's an infinite field of vibrating, dynamic, interactive energy and information. And it's outside of time and space. There's no past or present, future separation. It's a unified field of consciousness. And there's many different names for this that have been given over, the centuries by different cultures and different belief systems. So for our purposes, we've shown it here on the bottom of the screen and condensed it down, even though it permeates everything. Now, take a moment and reflect for yourself on, what do you call this unified field of life force energy? Some people call it prana. Some people call it chi. Some people refer to it as spirit. Some call it God. I love this. A friend refers to God as the genius of design. Some people call it creator, consciousness, the source, the divine. So, what do you call it, or what would you like to call it? Thing is, we're not separate. We can't be separate. We're all connected. And regardless of gender or race or belief systems, at the depth of what can look like very different exteriors, we all resonate with a desire to be loved, to be safe, to be accepted, to belong. Now, currently in the world of psychology, we're working with attachment theory. And that's the impact of the healthy, secure attachment and unhealthy forms of attachment, and how they impact the experience each of us as an individual has in our life. Now, I actually think that the original attachment disruption for our human race is the separation from, or the disruption of, our harmonious resonance with our environment, with our Mother Earth, and with the more than human world. And this core disharmony is reflected in individuals then as mental and physical health issues, relational conflicts between people close to home or primary relationships in families, within organization, within our politics, between our nations. So the more out of tune we are with the natural world, the more disembodied we are. And the more disembodied we are, the harder it is to be aware of and tune in with the world around us. So the more we recognize our reciprocal relationship, the healthier it will be for ourselves and for our planet. And we can't afford not to recognize that. An integrating factor within programs we offer at Haven is embodiment. Now that includes conscious breathing. There's many, many ways to breathe consciously. And the intention is to fully inhabit our bodies because our bodies are nature. So breathing to attune to our body, to heighten awareness, and to become genuinely present. This reunites our physical, our emotional, our spiritual bodies through a variety of specific experiences that we offer. So for a moment, right now, notice your own breath. And be aware, is your breath shallow? And maybe your breathing was completely out of your awareness until I asked. So in this moment now, take a moment to shift your body just a little bit and relax your lower belly. And now relax your jaw and your shoulders and breathe deeply downward. Breathe downward as if you're drawing your breath through the core of your body and down into your legs. Notice the weight of your body in contact with wherever you're sitting or lying. Keeping your lower belly relaxed, take a few more of these breaths and notice sensation in your body. It's interesting because often we forget to breathe when we're thinking. We actually can breathe and think at the same time. So continue now just to take some easy, deep, very conscious breaths. For genuine transformation, for this psychological and emotional insights and shifts, we must actually be embodied, must be aware and integrated within our own bodies. And it's interesting to me that we're facing a global crisis right now, and it's related to our going to sleep. It's having gone unconscious by tuning out and cutting off our natural resonance within the field of life force. And that at the same time, scientists are now beginning to prove what our ancestors and the ancients of our cultures already accepted. They honored and lived harmoniously with resonance with our planet and our earth. So consciousness is not exclusive to humans. So remember that trees and creatures and even stones and rocks are vibrating energy with their own consciousness. Now, the awareness of all of this is actually ancient. Indigenous peoples, shamans, medicine carriers, witches, our ancestors in all cultures knew this. They accepted it as natural, and we were tuned into it all along. Unfortunately, over time, they were marginalized, feared, destroyed. So around the globe today, thankfully, there's a growing recognition of the necessity to wake up, to tune in that the human race itself is dependent upon and interdependent with our planet. So as we wake up and realize that we're multi-dimensional beings, we recognize also that we have a natural ability to access a higher and broader consciousness than we've been conditioned to believe. And that awareness and that waking up is increasing. And we're so privileged with the information that's available us in these days to actually have a conscious choice over where we focus our awareness and our action. So we actually have a conscious choice over how conscious we are. So for the purpose of this model, you'll see at the bottom of the screen the condensation of the symbol for the unified life force energy. Now, the intention for the next few steps in this model is to show how we go out of harmonious connection and actually why it isn't necessary and how it's possible to change that. So what you'll see emerging on the screen now is a burst of energy on the left-hand side. Now, this is actually represents the flame of life force bursting into existence. This is a unique individual coming into being, and they're infused and enlivened by this invisible life force. And on the right, here comes another unique being coming into existence. And every cell in their bodies are interacting with our environment, constantly transmitting and receiving information. Now, you'll notice on the left side, there is a triangle formation, and that represents our physical body being incarnated. Now, at this point, we're very, very open and undefended. We're completely vulnerable and helpless. We're actually one of the most helpless creatures in nature, and we're unable to survive for very long on our own. And yet we're still connected and open at this state, in this very early state, to our multi-dimensional consciousness. And this is why little kids can experience other realms. They can experience other realms in their dreams or when they're awake. They see other beings, and they have communication with the natural world that most adults can't any longer experience. So at this point, we're resonating big time with our environment. We're human tuning forks, physically and emotionally, like sponges. We're absorbing the information and vibration around us through all of our senses, and that's through the field that we exist in. So we're imprinting patterns of behavior, energetic imprints that we form our bodies and our minds and our character around. Now, of course, the other being is different. They're around one, they're unique, and they're also doing the same thing. Now, human beings, as I mentioned, are the most vulnerable of creatures. So we'll die if we're not taken care of for an extended period of time, actually, by what we'll refer to as the authority. This is the authority of life or death, the people that can determine whether we live or die. So at this point, it's the all-powerful being. So it's our mother or our primary caregiver or caregivers. Now there's two essentials. One is to bond, to be held and communicated with, and the other is to be fed. Mother and a meal. We must be held, we must be related to through touch and voice and eye contact to be stimulated into life and comforted. And secondly, we must be fed. Our physical body must be nourished and made comfortable. Now, the earliest pattern of relating is through the process of being taken care of. Discomfort is a survival signal. It's imperative that we're comforted with food and connection, or we'll die. So comfort is embedded in our systems as a survival necessity. Now, our earliest survival tool, first of all, screaming to indicate that we're uncomfortable, but it's the ability to please so that we draw the comforting to us. So our adorable, tiny little helplessness turns on and stimulates the bonding hormones in the big ones. I guess you could put it that way. We smile, we make funny faces and endearing noises, probably the most pleasing that will ever be in our existence. Our tiny bodies feel good. They smell bad, so we'll get cleaned up, and then we smell so very good that we'll be cuddled and we'll be loved. There's nothing like holding a clean, sleeping baby. So these earliest patterns of relating profoundly influence our relating throughout the rest of our life. Now, to survive, we must be enculturated by building a protective structure around this vulnerability. So before we can talk, We're already being taught by the all-powerful authority to function within family and culture and environment. So we begin to create, we'll call it a box. We begin to create a layer of defense and enculturation around our vulnerability. This is where we're beginning to develop our ego. We're developing the beliefs and the attitudes based on what we learn through trial and error from the authority. We're constructing these necessary protections and patterns of behavior to fit in, to survive and ideally thrive the best we can in our given circumstances. And this is also the point where the suppression and repression of our essence and our authentic nature begins. We begin to restrict the flow of our life force. And this is where the narrowing of our consciousness begins. Many of our caregivers and teachers throughout the centuries of conditioning driven by fear and greed and hunger for power and control have been led to believe that our consciousness is confined to a limited awareness. Our capacity to tune in to multiple dimensions of awareness, the mystery and the magic of our existence has been feared and devalued and even laughed at. Our attunement with the resonance of the earth, our capacity for communing with the consciousnesses around us in the natural world, our own intuition, our soul, the divine, the broader consciousness of all things goes out of resonant harmony. The natural world is treated as an adversary to be overcome, to be controlled and possessed by us, to serve our rapacious needs without gratitude, without awareness or consideration of our impact. So often unwittingly and unconsciously, these attitudes and beliefs have been passed down through the generations and are now impacting our world today. When I think of consciousness, I like to think of the TV analogy for our being incarnated into a body. In simple terms, we're like television sets. The box is our material body, and this box acts as a receiver for the signals, consciousness, being broadcast. We can change the channels. We can choose what signal to tune into or what signal to tune out of. The TV itself gets old, it can break down, it dies, can be thrown away, disposed of, and yet the signal, the consciousness, remains constant. It's always been there, it always will be there. So over the eons, we humans have increasingly gone out of harmony. We've gone out of tune with the Earth's heartbeat and out of tune with this multi-dimensional consciousness. And we're actually designed to access this. It's actually our birthright. Unfortunately, we've gotten stuck on certain channels and we've been conditioned to believe that we don't have access to these other channels that are available. Our brains and our bodies are wired for expanded consciousness. Something I find fascinating is that a genetic mutation 200,000 years ago equipped us with, it's a unique mutation that equipped us with the capacity for language and a particular consciousness that appears to be unique to humans. Now, you don't have to become a monk or use substances to expand your consciousness. I've done those explorations and I've been, I'm appreciative for what I was taught. What I believe I was taught by the teacher plants was that they're just what they say they are. They're teachers. They show us what is possible in order that we can graduate and carry on our own. Now, this business of expanding and narrowing consciousness at our choice. So an example, simple example of narrowing consciousness is stubbing your toe. Immediately, everything else falls away and all consciousness, every bit of awareness is focused on the shock and the pain. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we can train ourselves through shifting our focus to also expand. We have limitless imaginations. We have the ability to change our minds, meaning change our life. We can choose to deliberately direct the focus of our thoughts and our sensations and to shift our awareness. We don't have to be exceptional to learn and develop. this inherent ability to expand consciousness. So, a little bit of breath. And for just a few moments now, relax again. Breathe deeply. Keep that belly relaxed. That gives you the space for your breath to go deeply down into your body. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. And now direct your focus to the sensation of your breath as you inhale and exhale. And follow the pattern of your breath right at the tips of your nostrils. Okay, now shift your focus. Direct your focus to begin to sense a wide open space behind you. And you have the ability to sense this even if your head is on a pillow. So keep sensing the expansion of this open, empty space. Continue focusing until you're surrounded by a vast emptiness, and keep going. And now sense yourself as a tiny speck in this vast, limitless, ever-expanding universe. On Gabriola Island, where I live, there's a beautiful stretch of road that runs through the center of a forest. We call it the tunnel. And when I'm driving, I'm often thinking of what I'm going to do next or going through my to-do list. And when I become aware that I'm doing this, I deliberately shift my thoughts away from that and expand my awareness to begin sensing the forest, and the space, the sky, and the nature that surrounds me. My nervous system immediately settles and I feel calmed. So, okay, with all of that, I want to say that all of us are engaged in the same process of narrowing our consciousness, focusing on problems, adapting to our environment to fit in and to belong. And we're subjected endlessly, it seems, to the rules and the roles and the controls. And it's necessary for us to learn the status quo rules of the game so we become enculturated to survive. So the challenge with this is that embedded in our nervous system is the imprint of the newborn experience that discomfort means death. So gaining more and more control over our helplessness, our actions, our feelings, and our thoughts, and including the people and the world around us, the natural world as well, that supports our existence, that's how we measure success. The more control, the more successful we are. So the rules and roles we learn come from centuries of conditioning, emphasizing the value of power and control, personally, culturally, religiously, economically, and those have all been largely motivated by fear. So this has narrowed and restricted our natural capacity for expanded consciousness. So we focus our energy on looking good on the outside, we're fitting into these constructed roles, and we're hiding our genuine selves in order to be approved of. And this undermines our inner strength and keeps us believing that we're small and limited. Or we compensate for that belief by exercising heartless power in a desperate way to try to overcome our helplessness. So our consciousness narrows to maintain that focus and limits our awareness of everything and everyone around us. And even our awareness of the multiple dimensions of our being is limited, cut off. We become egocentric, which is destructive to ourself, our others, and the planet. So the walls on the box, on our controls and our defenses become thicker and thicker as we restrict ourselves. This changes the frequency of our vibration. We become much more dense, rigidifying and thickening the layers of the protective structure we build around ourselves. And as I said, the motivation for this is fear. We're fear being open and vulnerable. We're fear losing control. We fear not belonging. We fear not being good enough. We fear not being loved, not being safe, either physically, emotionally, or psychologically. So this protective structure we can call the character armor. Our muscles tighten, our body posture, our way of moving and energy flow actually forms into particular patterns that are visible and written into our bodies.
Linda, just a quick note, 5 minutes before we open to questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I am going to go quickly then. I want to see if I can get to, so the net result of this, as you'll see in the diagram, is that the flow of our life force is significantly diminished. It's like a candle where it's been starved of oxygen and the amplitude decreases. So the result of that is that we experience our existence as empty or isolated or meaningless. In our egocentric way of living, we begin to look outside of ourselves to fulfill and somehow fill this void, fill this emptiness, and we begin to relate to one another, with the original patterns that we learned in our earliest days of life. And we begin to equate love and being in intimate relationship with being taken care of and taking care of. So in addition to trying to satisfy our emptiness with substances, with possessions, with spending money, with high charge activities, we expect another person to fulfill our dreams, to satisfy our deepest longings for connection. And as we begin to relate, that deeply ingrained pattern that love is associated with comfort and being taken care of comes into play. And we begin to measure love like a commodity. I love you more than you love me. If you loved me, you would take care of me and please me in the way that I'm comfortable. And before long, we begin to control ourselves to be pleasing, to get the satisfaction. We begin to control the other person or expect the other person to meet our needs, and then become angry, disappointed, dissatisfied when the other person isn't providing the security or the taking care of that we're looking for. Now, we're going to be going into much more detail about the ramifications of that in our future webinars. The thing to say here is that that's the point where we bring ourselves actually to the potential for transformation. Something has to change, potential. Maybe a tragedy occurs in our life that motivates us to ask, what's life all about? We get to a point of crisis, relationship or career or health. Some of us are natural seekers and searchers. We're following our inner stirring to know more about life. We're hungry for adventure and expansion. We feel a soul calling. So there's a great consciousness waking up at this point. And through experiences at Haven and other places, we're encouraged and supported and challenged to constantly bring ourselves forward to the edge of that comfort zone, to knock on the safety and the comfort of the convenient cage that we've created around us. And the phenomenon is actually that the tendency is to cling to those defenses. And even though we're longing for this expansion, as we close to the edges of our familiar cages, of our comfort zone, our energy begins to vibrate, and we can experience this as excitement or as anxiety. And unless we've learned how to handle this natural phenomena, we scurry back into our familiar cages. Now, one thing that I want to say is that there's encouragement to come to love our edges. Love those edges as the portals into liberation, as the portals into freedom, as the portals into expansion. And we come to actually respect those edges. And so people of all ages and backgrounds have the capacity to become aware of these imprinted and unconscious patterns and learn to relate and communicate with skill in less controlled and more vulnerable ways. Part of that is by breathing deeply and consciously becoming embodied and really tune in to their bodies and their own personal, very unique vibrations and resonances. And as we do that, the emotions that have been frozen and diminishing our vitality begin to flow. And the amplitude of our life force begins to increase again. It's like feeding the flame of a candle with oxygen. So those rigid walls, rigid behaviors begin to flex and to begin to open. And so our transmission and our receiving of information to and from the field around us begins to open. And we begin to relate to each other much more depth. Also, as the individual is more open, the less defended, and we can tune in again and are supported within the universal energy. So the higher frequencies that are being measured now in the cosmos also support us for that, penetrating us as human beings and supporting this acceleration in a way of a spiritual evolution, of our consciousness evolution. And the point here is that if we focused our consciousness and narrowed our consciousness by focusing on problems we've had in the past, on negativity and fear, those things are going to intensify. If we're expanding our consciousness by focusing on waking up, opening our hearts and minds to each other and our planet, then new possibilities will manifest. So what we'll do is we begin to feel stronger within ourselves. And as we flex and open and the amplitude of our life force increases, we begin to resonate at a higher frequency and a different frequency. And as we resonate, others will resonate and be attracted to us. So our connection is not limited to external behavior or the physical. We begin to relate to one another, not just between the walls of those protective boxes, but through the depth of intimacy and connection at a soul level, because we're connected within universal energy. So instead of trying to get love from the outside of ourselves, we're filled with abundant loving and open to share. And others then are, of course, attracted and resonate with us. So I know that we're short of time, so I'm thinking of what else I can say here. That one thing I do want to say is never forget that our soul is eternal. Energy is everywhere. We're equipped and capable of going beyond the patterns of restriction and narrow consciousness that we've become so accustomed to. We can choose to learn to breathe, to relate, to meditate, to commune with the natural world, and to live what I like to call, or what has been called, an egocentric life instead of an egocentric life. And that's a philosophy that places value on all living organisms and their natural environment. We don't have to be limited. And you'll see on the chart that we mentioned the word loving. Now, there's a difference between love as a commodity that's measured and bargained for, and I love you more than you love me, or prove how much you love me. It's a verb. It's a state of being. And what I can just say about that, just as we wrap up, is that loving is a skill. Learning to be conscious is a skill. Relating with one another is a skill that can be developed. And I'd like to say more about loving, but I think at this point I'll open it up to others and to comments. Actually, I want to say one more thing. My concern that we make scientific proof for all of this so important, and focusing on the capacities that we have, we focus on our capacity for consciousness as solely for personal gain and personal improvement, that we lose sight of the relational aspect and continue to ignore our interrelatedness with each other and our earth. So we have the opportunity to begin to develop these skills. And hello.
Hi.
I
see that I'm back on the screen again. So I'm interested in hearing or seeing some of the questions and maybe trying to direct towards some of those. Maybe we can make it more applicable that way.
How do we see the questions?
Hi, everyone. I can, you just go to ask a question, and there are some questions listed there. And so I can pull up one of them. It was from somebody named David, and they were telling us, oh, was you?
No, I'm
saying
saying
it was another David. He was saying that he understood the theory, but he was really interested in how we experience this consciousness or awareness directly. So how do we tune into the feeling aspect of it? That's one of the questions to be answered.
Okay, now my mic is on. Do you want me to answer that, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that I've had amazing experiences with is actually through particular forms of breathing, conscious breathing. There are actually styles of breathing that are used to actually activate the receptors in our bodies. Kundalini breathing is, for those of you who are familiar with yogas, and variations on Kundalini breathing. So extended periods of time and very focused periods of time of intensity of breath is to not be afraid of intensity. Another way is specific meditations designed to practice. It's like exercising the muscle of your consciousness to learn how to focus and narrow your consciousness and to sustain that, and then to be able to learn to expand your consciousness, similar to that very short experience that I offered when I was talking. Communing.
Sorry, Linda.
Sure.
Thought you were finished.
I'll just say communing in the natural world, and I'll let you talk.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to add in that I think it's a huge question, great question, and a huge question, and absolutely we will be addressing that more fully in following webinars. I think that it's possible to, and maybe the point of this webinar is it's possible to address our consciousness, to develop our consciousness, to connect with consciousness anytime, anywhere, any way. And as Linda said, there are some ways that maybe work better, and maybe that's for you. It is for me too, Linda, the same kinds of things. Maybe it's different for some of those of you watching. I think paying attention is, engaging with my attention is a great way to, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing the dishes or vacuuming, if I can focus my attention in and stay fully engaged and present in what I'm doing, then I think my consciousness opens up. One that I've been experimenting with just recently is just sitting, and I know other people have done this, but just sitting and saying out loud to myself, really, gratitudes that I have about my life and about the world around me. And that's had an amazing opening experience. So there's a few more thoughts. Jennifer, have you got another question up for us?
Yeah, sure, I do. This one comes in from Frank, and he's wondering, how does any of this make a difference to our external world and what's happening in the world right now?
Of course, you have to believe that there's a difference between the external world and the internal world in order to think that way, which I don't. But I get your question, Frank, that, I think we can get lost inward looking and believe that that's where our consciousness is. And then we don't pay attention to what's going on around us. And absolutely, I think when I am more awake, I become more aware of my environment, of my society, of my community, of my friendships, of people that I care about, and immediately begin to make a difference in those regards.
I'm also thinking of in our interpersonal relationships that where we have to begin is we have to begin where we can begin, and that's within ourselves. And in that, it's not so much, again, the theory, it's not so much the controls that we have, it's how we begin one person at a time to relate with one another. And the other thing is to acknowledge and recognize and actually connect with people that we discover that are resonating with us and our values. There are pods of people around the planet right now that are focusing their consciousness, focusing conscious attention, focusing conscious intention on healing, on peacemaking, on making a difference in some of the most difficult parts of the planet. So again, it means coming together, it means cooperation, it means communicating, it means coming out of our artificial isolation. It also means not withdrawing and thinking that we don't matter.
Which I think, Linda, what you're saying, and David, love to hear if you have anything to say there too, but it is so much linked to the theme. Like, it's about expansion and waking yourself up and becoming more awake by different practices, whatever that may be, but in order to impact the whole. So I really appreciate that question and your perspective. Anything you wanted to add to that, David?
Yeah, I would just add that for me, consciousness has never been something that is outside of me or inside of me. That I have in my life gone looking for consciousness, reading about consciousness, trying to develop better, higher, more consciousness through different ways. I've tried those things. For me, consciousness is relational, always. And so if I want to develop consciousness, or if I want to bring consciousness in, it's about being relational. That includes, I think, in our world today, politically, social actively, if that's a word, the more relational we can be, and there's a lot of tricks to that, the more conscious we can be. So that's my add-on.
And, I'm also thinking, similar to what you're saying, David, we actually can't be separate. So when I think about the strife in the world, for example, if we spend our time complaining about that, wringing our hands about it, we're actually contributing to that resonance. Where when we're willing to step in and to focus on what are the possibilities and to work together on those possibilities, that's when the resonance actually will shift and can shift. And it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yes, thank you, Linda. There's so much richness and vastness to unpack in all of this, but I think you and David have touched on a lot. Just looking at the questions again, there's a couple more that are floating in, so we'll keep going. Katie actually is talking a little bit about the self-hate cycle and the tendency to isolate and go into this normal pattern of thinking things are never going to change. Anyone know about that? I know about that one too. People don't like me or anything like that, which might lower consciousness. So it's difficult to get out of. Do you have any suggestions on how to jolt out of this? She's asking.
Well, self-hatred is extremely self-involving. It takes a lot of time and energy and focus to hate myself. So one of the things, and believe me, I've had a lot of experience with this, and I think one of the life-saving things for me is a curiosity to actually be interested in other people, who other people are, what other people are experiencing. And there's so much to be interested in and to learn about in our world. So that's one path.
Yeah, I would
say something?
Self-hatred, I think, or self-criticism, or whatever you want to call it, it is an obsession, you know. And when I'm involved in that obsession, my thinking, my feeling, my consciousness is diminishing into a smaller obsessive place. And so consciousness requires a willingness to expand. But it's a great question. What the hell does that mean? What do you mean expand? I think for me that the greatest thing I've learned in my life is acceptance. And it's an easy word to say and a tough thing to do. And that includes accepting when I am criticizing myself. It's just like, yeah, okay, I'm criticizing myself. I'm angry with myself. Okay, I am. Now what? Or the opposite of that. Oh, I feel really good about myself. Okay, good. Now what? It's only when I think that I or we get stuck in one of those realms that we lose our perspective, we lose our consciousness.
Something that particularly in some of the tragedies that I've experienced and some of the health challenges has also been remembering my heart, and along with acceptance, and probably that facilitates acceptance, and something that can be learned is to actually consciously choose to open my heart. Now I can help myself do that by actually breathing. And again, we come back to our bodies and we come back to resonance. It's a technique in some ways. However, it activates our heart energy when we deliberately, consciously imagine that we're actually breathing with our heart. So as we inhale, we experience our heart expanding. We actually experience that in our sensation. And as we exhale, we experience our heart energy, the energy electromagnetic field of our heart, if you want to say that, radiating throughout our bodies. And there again are ancient practices and current practices, because so much emanates and is healed and through the intelligence and activation of our heart and our heart field. And I think with self-hatred, that's the place to start, is opening my heart to myself in that way. And, you know, in some ways I do think it's a skill, it's a practice, and it's possible.
Yes, I agree with you, Linda. It is possible. And self-compassion, it starts there. And I really liked what you said, David, about acceptance and breathing into your heart to find that acceptance to start. And we haven't, you want to say something else?
I'm just seeing a question come up that a bunch of people have been voting for, and they're asking Linda what you mean by artificial isolation.
Oh, that's interesting. Is my mic on? Yes. Artificial isolation, because in the sense of our interwovenness with the universe, we're not actually isolated. We can't be. We believe that we're isolated. We tell ourselves that we're isolated, but
we're not isolated. We're not isolated. We're deluded.
Yeah, that's it. We're really screwed up in our beliefs and our attitudes, and so that's what I meant by artificial. It does seem to come naturally to us to protect ourselves and to defend ourselves, but I don't know that self-hatred is actually natural. I think it's something that, when I was mentioned through eons and eons of this quest for power and control and ways to overcome fear, that in our natural state, I don't think we actually hate ourselves and that we're not isolated. So that's what I mean by the artificial. Did I answer the question? Because I've got other thoughts, but I want to leave more time.
I think that's good.
Mm-hmm. So another question that's come up is around, Linda, if you have any hints or practices on how to develop our capacity to love. I think you've said some of them around breathing and self-compassion, but anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I'll tell you personally, I think that grieving and loving, as some of you have heard me say, and as I think it's Stephen Jenkinson says, are twins. And so the interesting thing is we have, I'll use the word artificial again, we have this fairy tale fantasy about what love and loving is, and it means that everything is cushy and nice and soft, and yet our capacity for loving is fierce and intense, and our capacity to experience sorrow, pain, hurt is also fierce and intense, just as it is to experience joy. And so I think that to really open and nurture our capacity for loving, it's the willingness to go to those edges, engage with those things that we fear, open ourselves to the depths, not only of our joys and our ecstasies, but also the depths of our sorrows and our pains. And in that way, embrace life, embrace the spectrum of intensity and feeling that we are all capable of as human beings. And in that, our hearts break open.
I want to come in on that, Linda, about experiencing the sort of the full range, because there's another question about what are the best tips for raising vibration or for increasing vibration. And then I see one right below it, that was Natalie, and then I see another one from David saying, are you saying that this vastness is experienced as a somatic embodiment? And yeah, David, absolutely for me. This vastness is experienced through somatic embodiment. And as far as the raising of vibration, an awful lot of that, I think, has to do with attitude. Because it seems in today's world, a lot of people, for example, are having a hard time with anxiety. Anxiety is raised vibration. It's an increased vibration. Fear is an increased vibration. So is anger, so is joy, etc. And yet when we become so nervous about allowing our anxiety, about walking into our fears, we shut down our vibrations and we can't experience the whole range as a result. So to me, the first tip is sort of change your mind about that it's okay to have more vibration.
Something else about love, I just happened to have a quote, and this is from someone named Erich Fromm, who's a social psychologist, psychoanalyst, philosopher, and he said that there's a case to be made for love as a skill, and it's to be honed the way artists apprentice themselves to the work on the way to mastery, and it demands of its practitioner both knowledge and effort. And I know Thich Nhat Hanh also said that, you know, love isn't something that we just kind of fall into by chance. And it's a skill, and we attain that capacity through deliberate practice, just like any other pursuit of human excellence. And I love that, because I think loving is a state of being rather than a thing. And that's one thing I want to emphasize. But I think it's not something to be taken for granted. And I think often it does get taken for granted in our culture.
Yeah, I think so, Linda. And I think it does take consciousness to actually bring our loving forward. So that's what this is great, all of these questions. And I think we have time for one more before we start to kind of wrap up. And there seems to be one online that's got quite a few votes, and it's from Grant. And basically he's saying he has a struggle in his mind, often wanders back to safety and perhaps past safeties in career and income and other parts, I guess. My felt sense is that I'm capable of so much more, but on an entirely different path. Do you have any suggestions?
I think for me, my mind wandering to safety or past concerns or present concerns about career or income or whatever, I don't think that's a problem. I think it's fine to have my mind wander to those things. The question is whether my mind stays there. And for me, the answer, or the way that I have my mind not stay there, is to find other things to focus on. So it's okay for me to worry about money, for example, but it's also okay for me to focus on music or focus on art. All of those are okay. It's only when I make something not okay, like I shouldn't be focused on career, then I tend to get stuck there. Or if I should have a different pathway, then I tend to get stuck there.
And in terms of resonance and in terms of vibration, I think what you said, David, is really important, is to not become stuck and to be replaying over and over and over again our fears. That's one of the things to, in terms of heightening consciousness, to be aware of, is start noticing how many times in one day am I thinking about the same thing over and over again, repeatedly thinking about my problem or my worry, for example, about money, and how often, which often is not often, do I actually have an original thought, and how thought is vibration. There's frequencies of thought. When I keep myself in the frequency of focusing on a problem that has occurred in the past, or worrying that that same problem might occur again in the future, I'm actually communicating, I'm actually transmitting a signature that is equal to the resonance of that particular problem out into the broader consciousness. And in that way, I'm attracting the past. I'm attracting the past to repeat itself in that way. And so the more that I can catch myself, okay, Linda, I've thought about this 18 times so far today. What value am I getting out of repeating this thought? Now, where can I focus? Where else can I focus? Where can I breathe? Where can I choose to even look for an original thought and to shift my consciousness in that way? And that's one thing that I worked with over and over again when I was facing all of the the cancer, the doctors, and the treatments, and the statistics. And I feel thankful. I found it very, very beneficial.
Oh, great. Thanks, Linda. I think, you know, what I'm taking from what you're saying has to do with being very present and being able to call myself back when I'm up in my head thinking about the past or other things, to try and get present with the moment. And I know we're going to talk a whole lot more about that, as well as loving, as well as relating, and especially into next webinar, which is on October 16th, into how the brain works. And David, you're going to be taking us through that and the neurobiology of connection. So I wondered, David, if you wanted to just say anything about that right now before we start to close here.
Yeah, just that there, as Linda said earlier, I think that we're wired as human beings for being in contact, for being in connection, not just between each other, but with the world around us. We're wired to be open and alive. And so what we want to talk about in the next webinar is that a little bit about the wiring, a little bit about how that works, and some of the deeper aspects of what's really going on between and there, and how we can make an impact.
Okay, just putting my mic back on there. Thanks, David. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Linda and David, for tonight. So much richness. I'm glad that people can actually watch the recording afterwards, because there's just a wealth of information and a lot, I am imagining, even based on all of the questions and the chat that's been going on, people are intrigued and interested in what we're saying here. So please do continue to engage with us. And I'm going to talk about a little bit how you can do that. So again, thank you from my heart to yours, both of you. And thank you for everybody who's actually stayed here online with us tonight. I know you're out there in the background, even though we can't see you. And thank you for chatting and being with us. And it looks like David and Linda have gone away for now. That's okay. They'll be back. And that'll be on October the 16th. And I think in the chat area, we're going to have a link to the registration for the next webinar. And if not, then you'll be seeing it in a follow-up email. So please do join us on that next one. And so we promised before we close tonight that we were going to congratulate our winners for the joining books. So we have those winners.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Please tuning in for one quick sec to say that we've just put a button beneath the webinar. It says register for webinar number 2, and that will link to the next webinar. So people can do that now if they wish.
Yay! Thank you, Jason, my wizard, my technical wizard. Thank you so much. So you can just sign up and register for that now. And again, if you can't make the webinar, it's okay. Register and you will get a recording for it. So back to the announcement. We'd like to offer these 3 free books, and congratulations go out to our winners. And they are our 37th, our 72nd, and our 298th registrant. And those people are Rhonda B, Nicola I, and Susan B. So you know who you are, and we know who you are, and we will be sending you something in an email so that you can get your joining book from us. Now, the other announcement I wanted to make was for anybody engaging in this webinar, we have an exclusive offer, which is 25% off any of our selected, not any, selected programs in October, November, and December at the Haven. So stay tuned for what those are. I think there's about 14 different programs that are running in that time period. And you'll see that in an email, and a discount code will come with that as well. So please do see that. There will also be a link to the second webinar. And you can engage with us on Facebook. I know that that's been added into the chat area as a link. We have a Facebook event, and up ongoing, there's little posts, and you can engage with us, ask any questions that you might have. And just another announcement is that we will have more core faculty members joining us on these calls on November 18th for the webinar 3 called Consciousness and Relating. We actually have Toby Macklin, another core faculty member, who will be joining us. And on December 12th, for the webinar Loving Your Life Now, Kathy McNally, another one of our core faculty members, will be joining us. And I think they are in the background here. And they're watching and seeing what we're doing and how we're doing this. So we'll look forward to you enjoying and being with us on those webinars. There's all kinds of links to other wonderful Haven resources available to you, our books, the next upcoming Come Alive program, which is our foundational program. So please do sign up for those or look for those in the areas. And sign up to receive an email from us. You can decide what you would like. There's different ways to engage with us, but there's certainly an opportunity for you to be in touch with us at the Haven. And we really do appreciate you being here and participating in this and supporting the Haven to, again, reach a broader audience in the world. That's what's so exciting to me here, is that there have been so many that have joined from all over the place. So without further ado, and I think it's only a couple of minutes before we actually end the webinar, which was at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we'll close out, and hopefully you will continue to expand your consciousness with all of the food for thought and interesting perspectives that were offered tonight. So wishing you all well, and have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.